I just hit? What did it do? There's something wrong. Here we go. Can I introduce Anne Campbell, who on my right, who's School Council President of our school. Myself, I'm Principal of the Sovereign Hill School, and Linda Warner is a teacher in the school with that strange look down the bottom there, looking at that poor child's eye. Our school is fairly unique in that we exist within a museum within Australia, but that's another story. What we're looking at today is simply about the colonial background of training of teachers up until the present day. So if we look back into the 1850s, and it seems to be a common trend of all people that I've listened to today, most school systems started around about the same time. And we were no different in Australia to countries in Europe. And in 1851, Hugh Childers was a prominent educational of that period. And after he visited 135 schools in Victoria, he said, "I fear that the large proportion of teachers are by no means competent. Several are hardly able to write legibly, and many are ignorant of all but the first rules of arithmetic." So the first teachers were just people who were really plucked off the streets to teach in the school. There was no training, and often they were, as I said, very poor literacy skills themselves. He also provided some illuminating information concerning the background of the 120 teachers in the 74 denominational schools he visited. Now in Victoria, there were two structures of schools. There were denominational or religious schools, and then there were the national schools or the government schools. So there were no regular paid monitors of apprentice teachers. 5 teachers have been trained in normal schools, 34 had been trained in tuition before arriving in the colony, and I ascertained the previous occupations, 47 of these, 14 were clerks, 6 were tutors or governesses, 14 were shopkeepers, 7 were farmers and 2 were constables from the police force. So there's not a lot of training at all in being a teacher. And that was probably, I would say, the same in most other countries. Gold was discovered, and that changed the history of Australia forever, because suddenly, from being a struggling little colony the other side of the world from Mother England, hundreds of thousands of people from all over the world arrived in Australia. In Ballarat, where we come from, there were 22 different nationalities. And mainly from Europe and England, Ireland, Scotland, but there were French, German, Italians. So all those people brought a lot of different ideas, which weren't necessarily what the English government thought. But the situation as far as teachers went, when the gold rush hit Australia in the 1850s, was worse, because all the teachers just left to look for gold. So there were less people to teach. The first school in Ballarat was St Olympia's Catholic School, and in its infancy as a school it was not very regular in its attendance by the students or the teachers. So because school wasn't compulsory, and it didn't become compulsory until 1872, a lot of kids didn't go to school. Parents tried to send them, but you had to pay fees, and a lot of people would not have had money to pay fees. So, and it was also flea-ridden, which is not a very nice thing for school to be. The colonial period, the reality of it was that both teacher and taught remained in desperate need of education. So the teachers needed to be educated as well as the students. And the community had less than half its children in schools, and too many teachers were near illiterate. Now that's a desperate situation when the teachers who are supposed to be teaching the children to read can't read themselves. It leads for all sorts of problems. In 1855, national training institutions were established, and that led to some training of teachers. I love this one. We dug up some rules for teachers of different periods of time. And this one in 1879, and people who are teachers here can relate to sort of this. I hope you live up to this. Teachers will fill the lamps each day and clean the chimneys before beginning work. Each teacher will bring a bucket of water and a scuttle of coal for the day's session. Make your pens carefully. You whittle your nibs to the individual tastes of the children. Many teachers take one evening a week for courting purposes. Take note of that, gentlemen. and 2 evenings a week if they attend church regularly. So if you attend church regularly, you can go courting 2 nights a week. So probably most men went to church. After 10 hours in school, you may spend the remaining time reading the Bible or other good books. I'm not sure how many teachers do that today. Women teachers, I love some of the stuff for women teachers is horrific. You ladies will love this. Women teachers who marry or engage in any other unseemly conduct will be dismissed. So you could not be married and work in a school or teach in a school. You could if you're widowed or single. But that unseemly conduct was interesting. Every teacher should set aside from each pay a goodly sum for his declining years so that he will not become a burden on society. And any teacher, there's a lot of teachers I would suggest is in trouble over this one, who smoke, use liquor in any form, frequents pool or public halls, or gets shaved in a barber shop, will give good reason to suspect his work, intention, integrity and honesty. So they're wonderful rules, and we have a slide later which Linda will talk about and compare rules between the different periods. Now I'll hand over to Anne now, who's going to talk more about when teachers' colleges came into place. I'll hand over to you, Anne.
As it says on the slide, Victorian teachers' training colleges had their origin in the model schools from 1885. As Michael pointed out, the need for teachers to actually receive some professional training was desperate. And in 1913, teachers' colleges were divided into 3 departments. Primary, we call it, some of you call maybe early years, you know what I mean, elementary, so it'd be like from what we call prep, first year to grade 6. Secondary, the middle years from grade 6 to roughly year 12, the matriculation you might call it, or when they finish school, and then, up to say year 10, and then onwards. Gender equality was still not evident, as seen by the rules, and I'll point some more out to you in a moment. So I'm using my glasses. Oh, thank you. These are the rules for women teachers, which we found quite amusing, and I'm sure today's women watching and listening would appreciate this. You will not marry during the term of contract, as Michael points out. And even as late as 1976, when I was actually married, that I had to resign from what we call a superannuation. There was no ongoing superannuation, even as recently as that, once you were married. That's all changed now, of course. And the pay was not equal at that point. You will not keep the company of men. You must be home between the hours of 8 p.m. and 6 a.m. unless attending a school function. You may not loiter in ice cream parlours. Never mind that there probably weren't any in Ballarat. You may not travel beyond the city limits without the permission of the chairman of the board. You may not ride in a carriage or automobile with any man unless he is your father or brother. Cigarettes again, no cigarettes. You may not dress in bright colours. I've got a white top. That's okay. You may not, under any circumstances, dye your hair. You must wear at least 2 petticoats, and your dress must not be any shorter than 2 inches above the ankle. To keep the schoolroom clean, you must sweep the floor at least once daily, scrub the floors also, and I'm sure you can read the rest. So it's thank you. Post-World War II, teachers' colleges were established for training, secondary, primary and sub-primary teachers, as we said earlier. And then they introduced what we call technical colleges, training more in the trades, things like welding, building, construction, those type of colleges. And then, of course, agriculture, because that's at that time particularly, Australia was largely an agricultural nation, and agriculture was seen as very, very important. And there still exist today agricultural colleges within our education system. Massive migration, as Michael referred to, but even more so post-World War II. You don't need me to tell you about the young people that people were going through over here. So many, many people, and many, many of us, our family origins trace back to the times when families, for a whole range of reasons, decided to leave Europe and to leave the United Kingdom as well, and in some cases Asia, to come to Australia. And our country and our culture has been greatly enriched as a result of that. And education became greatly valued and sought after because these people came from a background where learning was really, really valued and highly sought after, and that they contributed again greatly to the improvement of learning and education in our system. Tertiary education became accessible. Again, that was the first in our society. And this, we're talking post-World War II, so not that long ago, really. Thank you. Studentships were introduced, and myself and Michael and Alan, my husband, we were all benefactors of that. That was introduced to encourage people to take up teaching, and so the government introduced a system whereby when you were in your final year of school, you would be, if you expressed an interest in becoming a teacher, you would be subjected to an interview to see if you were psychologically perhaps suited to the profession, and then you were given what they called a small bursary to help you to finish that year. Then you were then able to apply for a studentship, which the government actually paid us to go to Teachers College, we call it university now, Teachers College for 3 years, and provided we then agreed to, we were what they call bonded to the department. So we were committed to staying with the education department for 3 years post our training. But when you talk to people of today that go to university and you say to them that they actually paid us to be there, it's quite amazing. And there was no part of that there was no choice as to where you would be sent within Victoria once you left the training. So we can all really remember sitting in a lecture hall much bigger than this, and out would read your name, and then they would read the name of the school that you were going to, and it was just up to you to organise how you would get there, where you would live.
Like the army.
A bit like the army. But it did open up fantastic opportunity, and one of the best things it was is that it made tertiary education and eventually university open to all social classes, because up till that time it was very much an elitist system where only people with money behind them and wealthy backgrounds could go. There was initially a 2-year course, TP/TC, as you can see, and then eventually it became what they called a diploma of education, and now of course it's actually degree status and it's a 4-year. Linda will talk more of that. Training was focused, and the interesting thing is that there was very much an emphasis on us actually learning about the theories of education and pedagogy, as well as subject content, some personal development obviously, which involves some psychology and some work in that area, and of course teaching practicums, whereby we went out into schools. In my case, we went out in our very first week in the training college, so pretty much finished school and then you were in a school, basically sitting on, we would, in our expression, the other side of the fence, watching and learning. So we were immersed in the actual role of teaching and life in a classroom almost from day one. And the practicums were quite strict. You were expected to deliver lessons, you had to submit your plans first and teach directly to that plan. There wasn't a lot of room for interaction from the children, that came a little later. And now I'll hand over to Vida, the younger member of our group. Thank you for listening.
So, university. From the 1970s, we moved into a transition from Teachers College to university, which I did. I did a 4-year degree, and I personally majored in drama and art. And I can teach from prep, which is sort of grade year 5 to 6, not grade 5, year 5. Yes, 5 years old, to about 16 years old, so before they do their final couple of years at school. But similarly, we also, in the first couple of weeks, or within the first 3 weeks, I think we were at in schools as well, doing our training. And so now teachers are bound by a teaching profession code of conduct, and it's overseen by the Victorian Institute of Teaching that we all have to become members of. And we're governed by a code of ethics. So there are different sections, so they cover professional conduct, which is relations with students, parents, families, communities, and of course colleagues, and personal conduct and professional competence, and it's all underpinned by integrity, respect, and responsibility. contrast. This is quite interesting. Between 1886 and 2013, and I might read through most of them actually because they are quite interesting. But 1886, when we've come a long way, and this slide will show you that. So teachers were expected to wash windows and clean classroom with soap and water once a week. Check outhouses, so the toilets, daily. Women are forbidden to wear in public a bathing costume, bloomers for cycling, skirts split to expose ankles, how rude, and a bustle extension over 10 inches. Men are forbidden to wear detachable collar and necktie removed from shirt. Shirt sleeves unlinked and unrolled, hair closely cropped unless they're bald or have a disease in the scalp.
The right teeth.
There are exceptions. For men, it's an instant dismissal if you smoke in public, use spirits, frequent pool or public dance halls. Well, you saw that before in the earlier slide. And women, instant dismissal if you marry or other unseemly conduct, join a feminist movement such as the suffragettes. So really, in 1886, it was about keeping up appearances. It was, how you conducted yourself as a teacher. It was nothing to do with your professional practice, your actual teaching ability. There's no mention of students in there or their well-being or what we're actually teaching them. So it was all about the appearance and the upstanding of how a teacher should look and conduct themselves. Whereas, we have moved on, thankfully. So in 2013, currently, as teachers, we must demonstrate integrity, respect and responsibility. And we do that by acting in the best interest of students, maintaining a professional relationship with students, parents, colleagues and the community, behaving in ways that respect and advance the profession, act with care and compassion, treating students fairly and impartially, holding colleagues in high regard, acknowledging parents as partners in the education of their children. I think that's quite an important one. Providing quality teaching, maintaining and developing professional practice, and working cooperatively with colleagues in the best interests of students. This is first and foremost, really, isn't it? Well, that's it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And then we'll go back.
Questions or we-
No,
At the end.
questions?